Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with our host, Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
Welcome to Just Plain Theology from Rome, Sweet Rome. This is a program offered by Natalia Yuzian on location in Rome. Natalia, it's good to hear from you again.
It's good to be with you again, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today, and sounds like we have a very good program coming up. By the way, that program last week was just outstanding.
Oh, yes.
Was that Sister Drosky?
Yes, Sister Catherine Drosky. She's the national.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's great. And we had a great program.
Man.
I'm hoping that we'll have her on again. And there's a lot that she could talk about. She teaches a lot of the moral theology at the Angelicum, at the bachelor level, at the license level, the doctoral. She's a reader for the dissertation director and reader for various theses as well. And she's Vice Dean of Theology there for the Ange, and she's wonderful all around.
Wow.
Invaluable to the school. Invaluable.
I would say that there was so much that you covered in that program too.
I know, we scratched the surface because afterwards we were chatting and she said, "Oh yeah, we didn't get to this," and I thought, "Oh well, maybe we'll just do a program at some point." So I'm hoping that and we'll follow up with that and have her on again.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about today now. Where are we going today?
Well, today I wanted to talk a little bit about someone who is very dear to me. Our family, we suffered a loss this weekend. My uncle died, and he was, his name was Vladyko Mikhailo Mikitse, Bishop Miguel Mikitse. He was the second bishop of the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Argentina. Retired at this point, and had been slowing down and all, but he didn't seem that sick, so that we would expect him to have passed this weekend, but he did quietly in his sleep and like that. So I wanted to honor his memory a little bit and maybe talk about his life. He gave himself to the church, and we'll discuss that a little bit. And then also, in honor of his life, we could then move forward into talking about the dignity of life in general, which was the subject of a march that happened here this weekend. On Saturday, there was a March for Life here in Rome, and so I marched with everyone, and I could tell you a little bit about that, too.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So let's...
Okay.
Okay, well, you don't know much about my uncle either. So this is my mother's brother, and to me as a kid, I remember as a child, he was always a larger-than-life figure, and as I got to know him, as he got older and he became sick, he, like a lot of older people, he got type 2 diabetes and whatever, so he was very careful about what he ate, and he just shrank over the years. He became so frail at the end. But I remember as a child, it just seemed so, larger than life, and he would come visit from Argentina sometimes for the summer and spend that with us, and that was always quite an event. But as far as his life, I'll just start from where it all began. He was born October 17th in 1934 in Ukraine, in western Ukraine. And when he was 4, our family, they left, then it was considered Poland. They left that area and went to South America. They first taught Uruguay. He was 4 years old at that point. And then in 1945, when he was 11, the family emigrated to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, and lived there. In 48, he entered, I guess you'd say it would be the minor seminary of a congregation called Don Orione and the Sons of Divine Providence. So he entered religious life first via the Latin rite, because there was no option for Ukrainian Catholics in Argentina at that point. They didn't even have a bishop. It hadn't been established yet. The structure of the church there just was too young. So he entered, and he finished his novitiate in 1953. He was around 18 and took his vows when he was 19. And in 1959, they sent him to Rome. He's about 24. He went to the Lateran University, and he got his licentiate theology there. He received that in 1963. He was ordained to the priesthood on April 21st in Rome, 1963. And at that point, he returned to Argentina, and he goes to teach at a school run by the congregation of Don Orione, and eventually he became the director of the school from 1965 to 1984. And I remember he loved that. He loved teaching the boys there. He loved going on trips with them. And he was there for almost 20 years, and they used to call him Padre Miki. His last name was Miquise, and, first name Miguel in Spanish, and, so there's Padre Miki. And he was well-loved, and he loved them, and he loved that work. And eventually, though, the first bishop of the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Argentina was Bishop Andrei Sapelak. He's on his way to retirement. He's going to put in for the resignation at 75. I think it's mandatory. So eventually my uncle was nominated for that. And on October 14th, 1990, he was consecrated bishop, and he was the auxiliary bishop then. And on January 20th, in 1998, Bishop Sapelak actually did resign, and so then my uncle became the apostolic administrator. And on April 20th, 1999, he officially became the bishop of the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Argentina. He was the second one. And, as I'm thinking back on his life, it's funny, you're studying theology and what the episcopate means to the church, St. Ignatius in Antioch, in his epistle to the Smyrnians, talks about where the bishop is, there is the church. There are the people gathered, meaning the church. And there's the office that the bishop is consecrated has various things where he is like the sacrament of Christ, representing for us Christ as a shepherd, Christ as the head of the mystical body in his see. He represents this for us. He is this for us. He is the leader of that see. And it used to be that a bishop was considered married, if you will, to his particular see. Now, my uncle never did leave his. Some do get transferred here there for various reasons, but he didn't. And all these things that you learn in theology, and it's funny, when you do know somebody personally this way, somehow it's easier to grasp what is objectively important for the universal church in that, through that personal connection, at least for me. So I'm thinking of him having been the second one down there, and the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Argentina it's not very numerous. In the diaspora, it's not one of the churches that gets the most press, even though we are the largest Eastern Rite churches in community with Rome. Brazil has more, actually. People might not know that. But you have many parishes that dot the country, and so bishops got to visit each one once a year minimum, and so people would wait for him to come for weddings and for baptisms and such. And he, they all loved him and waited for him, and they were just, you don't have that many priests there, so they really, really needed him to be there and waited for it, anticipated his coming. And he used to tell me about how he would travel the country, and I remember my mother visiting him once on one of these journeys in his beat-up pickup truck, and he just drove all over the country, visiting the parishes, his beat-up Isuzu truck, and it's what he did. It's simply what he did. I remember when he had been nominated and knew he was going to be consecrated a bishop, and he loved being the director of the school. He really didn't relish the idea of taking on this new administrative role. I mean, it's more than that, but that becomes a lot of the work. But of course, he did it. I mean, it's your duty, it's your vocation, it's your calling. You know that this is God's will, and you embrace it. It's not that he was simply resigned. He really did embrace it. Probably missed being with the boys, I think, teaching at the school. He really loved being with those young guys. But, this way he kept being with the people, and that was important for him. And it fed him, and, that's what the head of the C is supposed to do. He's there to tend the flock, to be the main teacher, and to govern the diocese, or the eparchy, as we would say. It's just what they do. So, and like I said, my mother went on one of these trips with him on one of her visits to Argentina a number of years ago. And she remembers going through one area, I think it was in the province of Misiones, and they were going through, and she just thought, they went for I don't know how many tens of kilometers and just didn't see anyone. And it's this rickety truck, and she said, my goodness, what happens if you get a flat tire? Well, they got a flat tire. And
no.
And you just wait. And he's now somebody will be by. Besides, they all know me here anyway. I'm the only one traveling these roads. And it's true. So people know him, and, they'll come by and like that. So, that was my uncle's life, and that's what he spent all those years doing. And in 2009, he was able to retire, and it was the time for that. And although he really didn't, in a way, because the next bishop that came along, once he officially retired, he was still working because he was helping out Bishop Stanislav Shevchuk, and then after he became elected to be the head of the Ukrainian Catholic Church as major archbishop, the current bishop who was there, he's been helping him out. So he's been there at the cathedral, and he's been assisting as is proper to his state now as being Bishop Emeritus. But he had a little bit more time to travel to see us in the States. So there were a couple of summers where he was able to spend the summer with us. And that was a great blessing, especially because we could share stories about living in Rome. And I think that was certainly something we never anticipated years ago that we would have in common. So he would ask me about my courses and what kind of theology courses I'm taking and the language courses. And he was very concerned about the Latin because he said, well, you have to know the Latin. I said, well, I've had a year of it. We met every day for a bit, so I had to go to okay, you're good then, that's fine. But how's the Greek going, So it's fun. We were able to talk shop and like that. It was just nice to have him there and spend time with him and to get a perspective on what it is that bishops have to deal with. It's so easy for people to criticize those who are in that position, running the church. They have a lot on their plate, and we don't think about that very often because from the layperson's perspective, or whether it's someone in a religious congregation or some movement, and you have something you want to get done, and there's always a criticism to have, and there might be a legitimate discussion to have with a particular bishop. It depends. But in general, there's a lot that we don't see. Not that I was privy to all the information, but I certainly had a sense of what he had to deal with. There were just a lot of fires sometimes to put out, and I gained a lot of respect and admiration for those who are there in their sees on a day-to-day basis, having to run the church. Like I said, there's a lot we don't see, we don't know, and it's a great responsibility. And I have to say, I once asked my uncle, I was half joking, and I wanted to hear his response, and he looked at me with surprise when I asked him. I said, well, what does it feel like to be a successor to the apostles? And he was very unassuming. He was always humble. He didn't like the trappings, if you will. Like the Eastern Rite bishops, you may have seen, instead of the mitre that the Latin Rite bishops have, they have what looks more like a crown. And when he would come to visit us, he would wear it when necessary, but he didn't always like to. He just didn't like drawing attention to himself that way. When I think about that, he sort of passed on that way as well. And there was something about him like that. He didn't like to have the attention on him, but if it was necessary, he would. He knew what being a bishop meant, and people needed that as well. They needed that presence manifest to them in the liturgical assembly and all. But I asked him, so what does it feel like? Ha, ha, ha. I was expecting some sort of an answer. He goes, well, the Lord was merciful with them. I hope he'll be merciful with me. And, I thought about that. I said, well, yeah, okay. That answer. And I thought about him today when I was looking over Acts, because in the classes on the Acts of the Apostles, we had a quiz today. So, of course, everybody was, going over the book and looking at it. And there was that scene where Peter prays and raises Tabitha up, who had died. And here I'm thinking, here's Peter, who knew his weakness, had denied Christ 3 times, and then with the at the end of John, where the risen Christ comes to them and makes them breakfast on the beach, Peter decided he was going to go out fishing, so it was all over. He just went back to what he knew. And he and John see Christ, and they go back to the beach, and so Christ asked him 3 times, do you love me? And so 3 times he reiterated that, as though undoing his own penance for the threefold betrayal. But here he finds himself in a position of at the body of a dead girl, and he's praying, and he must have felt in his own humanity what it was to be weak, to just be a man. But at the same time, now having been strengthened by having received the Holy Spirit, because it's after Pentecost, to pray and be completely open to who he was now for the church, in humility and on his knees and praying. And then, of course, she rose from the dead. And that humility in accepting this office, if you will, that's been given to you, it made me think of my uncle, who really didn't like the idea of that kind of, like I said, the attention. He would prefer to go, be in the background and do the work of teaching and just being with the people, but yet accepting what was there to do for him, this work he had to do for God. So my little tribute to my uncle. It was a blessing to have spent some time with him, especially the last couple of years when he was able to just come and visit and just share time as family. It's a great blessing to have someone like that in the church, in the family, who's also got this position in the church in the sense of maintaining the continuity of the deposit of the faith for the people, and being able to bring more and more people into the church through the baptisms, being able to marry, and it's beautiful to have had that. He was a real blessing for us. And like I said, it made me appreciate that office much more objectively by having known it from the personal side of things. So it was beautiful. It's an important.
You said your mother was able to. Your mother was able to visit him at in Argentina on one
right.
on those trips.
Yeah, she did.
Around the country.
Yeah. She was also. I wasn't able to be there when he was consecrated bishop, but she went with then his mother, who my grandmother, who was very proud, as you can imagine. She must have just loved him. I mean, they came from a very humble background in Ukraine, out in the country, in the villages. I mean, no one would have anticipated that happening. It was all very, very humbling for everybody. A beautiful thing.
So, have you ever been in Argentina?
I went, but a long time ago. I went back a long time ago, in the late 80s. Yeah, I haven't been back since, unfortunately. And all of this, he had died this weekend, and the funeral's already happened, so there was no time for anyone to even go down. I have a sister who was down there already anyway, so she was able to attend, and other family members who were down there. My uncle's brother's down there, a cousin, and other cousins I have, and so they were able to attend, which was great. And he died peacefully, what one could hope for. And so,
I don't know if you mentioned about Pope Francis and his having met Pope Francis.
Yeah, well, when Pope Francis was not yet Pope and still Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, yeah, my uncle, because the Episcopal conferences, he was part of all that, so he knew him then, and he would joke, he said, I taught him how to say, glory be to Jesus Christ, in Ukrainian, Slava Isusu Christu, Slava Naviki, Christos Voskres, as we would say, now Christ is risen, Voistino Voskres, and like that. So yeah, he did know him there, as the other bishops did, because we have the conferences and it just sort of happened. So that was, a source of pride that someone from Argentina became Pope of from South America. Again, nothing they would have foreseen. You just didn't expect that, so.
How did your mother happen to come to this country?
In the late 60s, my parents had been married already, and, two of the 4 kids were born down there. And just the economic and political situation was turbulent, so they just had an opportunity to come here. They were sponsored, and they had friends here, and it's like other immigrants who managed to find a job and come here, just looking for a better life for their kids. And so they came. I say here, I'm here in Europe, but I keep thinking of when I talk to them in the States. Ended up in the U.S. and like that. So it's a story like millions of people had back then. It was different then because you did have to have sponsorship to come to the States, and you needed to have a job waiting for you. But it wasn't. Those were the hurdles. I mean, it wasn't. It was possible, if you knew somebody, and there was plenty of work at that point. The manufacturing industry, especially, it seemed like those jobs were just there. They were quite plentiful. Things have changed now.
And you were born in this country, though, right?
Yeah, I was born in the States. I was born in the States, and we grew up with. One foot in the Ukrainian culture, very strong. That was important to my parents to maintain for us. And then, of course, obviously, you're living in the U.S. The other foot's in the American culture. But there was also the Argentine influence because of my mother's relatives, her brothers who were still, and her sister who was still in Argentina. And so we would always have somebody visiting from there. And then eventually I got to go visit, and whether that's part of you. So it seems like there are two things that don't normally go together, Slavic countries and and South American culture, even though Argentina is more European, you're saying more than the other South American countries. So, yeah.
What about the funeral arrangements?
That happens very quickly down there. Like I said, my older sister was down there already. We were asking about that because normally there's you have more time to prepare because you have more priests and maybe other bishops if they're near enough come. But in Argentina, they do things very quickly now. In part, I think because simply they don't have the same extensive preparations that we have in the States. And so it happened already. So it started last night, and then they had a funeral today.
What about?
Go ahead.
Is your mother going to be able to go? Did you say?
No. The funeral already happened. It was all very quick. They don't. I mean, in general, I'm told they don't embalm people down in Argentina. So the things happen very quickly. So there was no time for anyone to go down there. Unfortunately, it would have been. I would have loved to have been there. I did see some pictures up on the internet of him. So they had the requiem services for him. Para stas and panacheda, they say in Ukrainian, and then the funeral today, and then they interred him. And so there's a story of my uncle and his life given for the church and all his I just think of him driving all over. I was explaining to somebody at school today who asked me, what I did this weekend, and I mentioned the March for Life, but I also mentioned, I was on Skype with everybody this weekend, family members, about this. That was yesterday, and but as I was thinking about him, I said, boy, he was in that beat-up Isuzu truck, just driving all over the country, and I just pictured as threads connecting all those tiny little parishes all over the country, and just making sure that the faith is strengthened, people are receiving the holy mysteries, they've got their connection with their bishop. I mean, that's a big country. Argentina is a big country. To have one bishop for all those tiny parishes all over, it's a lot of traveling, but just reaching out and making sure that you have that personal contact, because it's your flock. These are your people. This is, you have a spiritual responsibility for them and have to answer to God ultimately for them. I know that's how he saw it. And so he did. That's what he did. And it's seeing that kind of fidelity, that's a great example. Great example. So
beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I'm hoping to put some pictures up. We'll put them on the blog page, and like I said, just to honor his memory for all that he gave to the church. And then the other thing this weekend was, of course, the March for Life here in Rome, which it's not as big as it is in the States, but it was a good experience. I had not, I wasn't last year. I missed it. And I remember saying a couple of months ago, I'll have to find out when it is and go. And so someone sent me an email, and I said, oh, great, I'll be able to go. And so I went, and it was a horrible storm the night before. I mean, it was flooding everywhere. The train stations had me. I mean, there were delays of hours and hours and hours. And it was just awful. And just some of the subway stops were flooded and all that. And then Saturday morning, there were all kinds of storms in the morning. And there's just one really just terrible one. It's hail. I mean, I've got pictures of all this hail just pounding the terrace. And I thought, oh, my goodness. And the water's rising out there. I thought, oh, Lord have mercy. I was coming to the apartment. And okay, it didn't, and eventually it did stop. And then the sun came out, and it was beautiful for the march. So we started way up on Piazza della Repubblica, and then went down. If anyone's been to Rome, they know Via Cavour, which is the main street there in Rome. And notably who was there was Cardinal Burke was there. So, he had lots of people around him who just wanted to either meet him, shake, kiss his ring, say thank you. But I could see that especially the Americans who were there were just, well, everybody, but especially the Americans were grateful for his presence there. And, sisters and seminarians and mostly Italian, obviously, in this case. And marched through the streets, and people were either praying the rosary or they were singing Marian hymns, and there was a really rambunctious group from Bergamo, I think, who were chanting, a lot of young folks. So they brought a lot of life to the march. And so we marched down to Piazza Venezia, and then people gave their testimonies. And there was one that was really interesting. It's a professor from the Catholic University of Louvain, although they've distanced themselves from using that in their title, I understand. I don't know enough about that, the history of it, but they had rejected a pro-life professor there, as one journalist wrote, or one blogger wrote. His name was Stéphane Mercier. He's a philosophy professor there, and he had read out some texts that talked about abortion as, taking a life, as taking innocent life. And so as he put it during his testimony, I'm in the process of getting sacked by my university. And so that was really unfortunate to hear, and I was with a Dominican near me who teaches at the Catholic University here, and just said that, someone like that needs support, so you have to let them know that what you did was the right thing, to stand up for truth, even if you're going to be rejected by the institution that is supposedly is going to adhere to these principles of life and the dignity of life. I mean, this is the basic absolute and basic fundamental human right. Any human rights that we talk about is going to be based on this. And so to reject this is to reject the very human rights that you are attempting to promulgate on the level of what is secular, as though this doesn't have its roots in what is theological, in what has been revealed by God, but even in the natural law. I mean, without the life, you have nothing else. I mean, this has to be accepted. So that was really, it was moving to see, because there's a real price to pay sometimes, no? I don't know if you've ever been to the March for Life in Washington. Have you ever been, Bob?
Oh, yes. Number of times.
Well, now the crowds there are much greater. And I was asking people about, the laws in Italy, and it's, legal to have an abortion. But what is interesting is that they say that many physicians are personally refusing to do it. So there's an interior impetus to stand against this, as opposed to pressure from the outside that would be saying you should not do this. There's something coming interiorly from someone saying, no, it is not right for me to do this. Something that's been appropriated, if you will, interiorly. That's far more important, it's far more effective as well, I think. When was the first time you went to the March for Life in Washington?
Oh, it's been about 15 years, I think.
Oh, wow. I wish I could have.
Well, that was the first time.
Mhm. What was your impression the first time you went?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah, it's
one thing I was going to ask you, at the March for Life here, there was a women's march too, which was in kind of in opposition.
Mhm.
So was there any of that there?
No, nothing like that. I mean, and a lot of that in the States, I mean, that was based on the recent election, and as well, it was the inauguration of Trump. It was in response to that. It was a reaction against that. So they didn't have the reason for that here. So no, that wasn't an element in all of this. And the March for Life here has not been, it's based on the one in the States. This is only the 7th one, I think. And that hasn't been going on very long. And there weren't as many people as you get, obviously, in Washington. There's different reasons for that, because of Roe v. Wade and just the political situation in the United States is very different. But there were a good number of people, and there were lots of banners and signs and a lot of people praying, and it was, you could see that these are people who are very, very serious about promoting life as this basic human right that is just being attacked, and you have to just sort of have to stand up and be counted, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was a great experience to go. Like I said, lots of young people there, and the ones from, I think they were from Bergamo, but they really were quite energetic, which was wonderful to see. And seeing Cardinal Burke, it's been criticized sometimes because they didn't see a lot of Catholic prelates like you would in the States. You see many more, so you just don't have lots of bishops. You saw a couple, but not like you would have in the States. It's just a different atmosphere. Some people don't like seeing that, or not seeing it, as I should say, unfortunately. And this year, I know our friend Dr. Lorraine Hartnett went, and Father Glenn Breed was there. And I remember seeing the pictures of Father Glenn. I think we talked about it when he was on the show, but he had blessed the march in the beginning. It was a great picture of him doing that. It was beautiful.
Yeah, they had to put a sign there.
Mm-hmm. and the witnesses, and of course seeing the vice president there. I mean, that was a first, which must have just given them a lot of energy. It was more of an upbeat atmosphere in the sense of, we're gaining ground here now, which is wonderful. It was great.
So
what else is new here in Rome? I can tell you the weather's gotten better, at least today.
Yeah.
It's just awful on this past weekend. And at school we had a mass that for the entire school was the end of the year. Blessing, where we honored the memory of the Dominican who got the Angelicum to be in the position it is now as a pontifical university, again, Blessed Hyacinth Marie Cormier. And we had a wonderful, rousing homily full of ardor by the head of the philosophy faculty, who is also on the International Theological Commission, Father Serge Bonino. We talked about the ardor in pursuing truth, have a real zeal for your study and going after the truth, and that's what we're there for. But that, prayer always has to be at the foundation of this, which is important. And that's one thing I have to say about the Angelicum. It's the only the only pontifical university in Rome that has Eucharistic adoration. I was surprised at that. So that's a good thing to have on our CV as a school, if you will. We had a nice, it was a beautiful mass, and everyone's studying and getting papers done and starting to prepare for going home or for their next year, the courses they're going to take, like that, and presentations. And we had a class today on prayer as the experience of God, so I have to do my presentation next week in Italian. I hope that goes well. I don't know how it'll go, but talk about John of the Cross and the role of that spirituality of the dark night that sometimes gets misunderstood. I think I might talk about the exaggerations that can come. I don't know how familiar you are with John of the Cross's writings. Have you ever read his poetry or his?
Oh yes, definitely.
And it's what I love about his writings. The theme of transformation into Christ just runs through everything, even though he has different ways of speaking about it. His works that sometimes can seem somewhat dry or even stark to people, where he talks in the Ascent of Mount Carmel or in the Dark Night of the Soul, his training as a systematic theologian comes out in those works, But it's still the aim. This is his foundation. But then you read his poetry, and it's just extraordinarily beautiful. It's language of a lover speaking, and this too is about transformation into the beloved, who is Christ, and how that's effected. One of the most poignant images for me from his writings is that of a log burning. You know how when a fire goes, in a fire you put a piece of wood into a fire, and when it first takes onto that log, there's a lot of commotion, if you will. You've got sparks and smoke, and it smells. There's a lot happening that your senses can latch onto to see. And it's like that in the spiritual life when you think about the purgative way. When someone starts along the way, there's a lot of purging that has to be done. We do what we can on our part, and then it gets to a point where we can't do anymore, or it would hurt too much if we just can't do it to ourselves. It has to be done to us. And we start becoming passive in that rather than active, even though you still, interiorly, you have to acquiesce to this. But that image of the log, eventually the fire takes it in such a way that it permeates it and transforms it so that you can't tell where the log ends and the fire begins, and it transforms, and the heat that comes out of what looks to be less intense, because visually it's not, but I mean those what's left there of the log that's glowing is just as hot, and it gives off a heat that will last longer. It's more stable in a way. It's kind of like what happens once you get into that the illuminative stage, God willing, and you're just the light's coming. It doesn't mean that the purgation isn't still there, but eventually you get to the point of union. Again, God willing, and He does will that. So it's a matter of us, not Him, saying yes.
Is that from John?
Yeah, he writes about that image, in the transformation of the log. I mean, there are various images, but this idea of burning love that does this, the fire of God's love, it's purifying. It's purifying. It's another image I think of. I don't know if it's helpful to someone who hasn't worked in the kitchen, but if you've ever made stock, chicken stock or meat stock or whatever, you put everything in the pot and the carcass and all that. It looks pretty nasty at that point. You've got these things that don't look very appetizing. You throw them into all this water and you turn up the heat and you just let it go. And eventually, as it boils, all the impurities rise up to the top, and you have to skim that off. This is a purification process that happens with us too. And it's not pretty, and we don't like it because we have to see ourselves in this not pretty state, and it's unpleasant. But it must be. It's the only way to do it. And the impurities they come up and they get skimmed off, but they have to come out. This is something we were talking a little bit about this last week with Sister Catherine in terms of the emotional life. Where just some things just have to come out. And if you push them down and pretend they're not there because you don't want to see that what might look like a rather either ugly or just banal part of you, it'll come out in some strange way. It has to. It's whatever has not been purified. It will make itself felt later. And the idea of it being purified is more of just removing what is an obstacle to God. This is what the purification process is about. It's about getting rid of those things that get in the way. Don't you think? It's the same notion of purity, right? It's like purifying metal, like gold or silver. It's the impurities in the sense of whatever's there in addition to this precious metal that you want to be there alone, just that, right? Not that the other things there are necessarily, bad or evil on their own or whatever, but I mean in the sense of it gets in the way, no? And that could be many things. Correct. It could be many things. John of the Cross will talk about that too, saying whatever it is that you're attached to the point where it gets in the way or keeps you from flying off into God. It doesn't matter if it's a silk thread or a large rope. Either way, you're still tied. The bird is still tied, and it can't fly no matter what. So all those things need to be those ties need to be unbound, if you will. And but the problem with it's not the problem with his doctrine. The idea of the dark night, or his idea of the nada, the nothing, the having nothing between you and God, could lead to an exaggeration, I think, of people then rejecting all sorts of very good temporal things that we need. So sometimes you'll find very zealous people, especially if there have been big conversions, or just a reversion or just a reawakening of the faith, where there's a desire to really move forward very quickly, and not necessarily out of any pride intentionally anyway. I mean, there's this desire, you just want to run, but before you can walk, perhaps, and you don't realize that you're not able to walk properly yet. And so you may just get rid of all these things, like, for example, good wholesome recreation. So some people think listening to music that isn't explicitly Christian or Catholic is somehow not allowable, which is not the case. Or reading literature that isn't explicitly Catholic. I've seen that sort of thing. There could be a great temptation for that. That's not the way to do it, We're supposed to be like leaven, and which means that whatever it is that you do, or anyone out there that is a Catholic, whether it is an author or a musician, it may not be something explicitly Catholic, but your Catholicism certainly is going to come through I'm thinking in this case of someone like a Tolkien, for example, and writing The Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of Catholic symbolism in there. He certainly didn't deny that, but he didn't make it explicitly an allegory. He didn't like that style. But it comes through. It's like leaven, that when you make bread, anyone's made bread, you know how that works. It's just you add it in, and it makes it rise from within. It just simply is there without you being able to discern it with your senses at one point, because it's just diffused throughout this whole food product that you've made. Great. So
yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Mhm. Yeah. It's I think in one of those where I was talking about rejecting that which is temporal, because it is temporal. It's you can't reject that physical part of you, because we're made this way. Our hylomorphic nature is such that we're both body and soul, and so that which is there on a natural level temporally, it's not to be rejected. We were made this way. But it's a matter of using things properly. And so, like last week we were talking about the role of the emotions. Now that's something that people associate with our earthly selves, if you will, not our spiritual self, and therefore it doesn't matter, or it'll somehow just sort of be taken care of on its own. God's grace builds on our nature, sure, He'll help that, but sometimes it needs attending to. It needs maturation. We have to grow in that way too, and spiritually, all kinds of ways. So I'll have to do a little bit more reading on that. So that'll be a good one. Do that thing out of the class. I think people are afraid of
when are you finished?
In the middle of June. So got a little ways to go.
Okay.
Mhm. And like I said, everyone's going to be studying feverishly in the next 2 weeks. Oh boy.
And then you'll be home after that, right?
Yeah, and then I'll be home, and then I get to see you in person again, Bob.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to be home. I'll be looking forward to coming back too, because in September a number of my classmates are going to be ordained to the diaconate, transitional. So that'll be exciting. That'll be nice. That'll be a Peter. So I'd like to be here for that. Just a great bunch of guys. It'll be wonderful to see. They're going to be great priests. Great priests. The church really, I have to say, studying here has made me hopeful for the future of the church. Some people decry the low numbers, but I don't know that they've not increased a bit in the last few years. But the quality is such, I think they're fantastic guys. So that'll be great.
Well, it actually turned out better than you even anticipated.
Yeah. Like I said, I never would have thought I would have been here. So when I was talking about my uncle earlier, we had some great conversations. He said comparing notes about classes and living here, and I never would have dreamed I would have been in a position to do that, to talk shop with him about our studies. Even though he said, "Oh, it's been so long, I don't even remember what we did." It's not true. Of course we did, but it was great to be able to do that. And at the Lateran, I went there actually at the Lateran University a few months ago. There was a conference given by our major archbishop, which is who replaced my uncle in Argentina. So he's giving a talk on the moral situation of the faithful in Ukraine, which was in a bit of a crisis. You have a lot of women who've left because the economic and political situation is being what it is. It's just very difficult to make any kind of a life for oneself. Unfortunately, they'll come here for work because work can be found, and they'll send money home, and it's they deem that it's necessary enough to leave their children behind sometimes with grandparents or maybe someone else to take care of them. So you have a lot of kids growing up without their moms for a few years being there, and that's not good. At the same time, it's what do you do when you can't find work and it's just hard to survive? It's a very tough situation, and politically, people are afraid, they don't know what's going to happen either. So so he was concerned about the moral situation and the fact that people have forgotten what a great privilege and joy it is to be a father. And so I think that's true. Now, you've got 5 daughters, don't you, Bob?
Yes.
So you know the joy of being a father.
That's right.
And it's seen as a burden. I mean, just the other day I was on the tram coming home from the march, and there was a young man on the tram, and he was talking with one of the friends I was with, and his friend of mine has 2 children with him, and his wife is pregnant with a 3rd, and eagerly looking forward to the birth of that 3rd child and maybe more, And so this guy was looking at the kid saying, "Oh yeah, it's such a burden." And the difference between the 2 ways of looking at children was so stark in these 2 men. It couldn't have been more. Their views couldn't have been more different. And it was very sad for that young man to have seen that, because he was young. He was at an age when he would be thinking about getting married and perhaps having your own family. And you could see he didn't even think it was worth considering at all. He just simply assumed that it was something so awful that it was you may as well be in prison. And that you could see that's how he viewed the whole thing. And I'm looking at my friends, and I thought, how is it that he can't see how happy this man is with his wife and his children? Because they really were. And the kids are a joy. And they're a joy and well-adjusted because they're loved and they're wanted, and they know it. It's been shown to them. And that will make them, even on a natural level, that's going to make them good, strong, secure human beings who will be able to go out into the world and do what they feel they've been called to do. But in this case, they have the faith bolstering them. So these kids are in a great position. And this young man was completely blind to that. It may have been half the bottle of wine he had drunk before he got on the tram, but maybe not. I don't think so. I think the truth is just flowing out a little bit more easily because of that. You have a lot of young kids who come here from different countries and have fun in Rome, and so they sometimes drink a little too much. Okay, but anyway, but still, obviously, he was so quick to decry this having multiple children at a young age. Like, why would you do this to yourself, kind of thing? And I thought, wow. He was so blinded by his thoughts that he couldn't even see the manifest happiness and joy in these 2 people who were there with their children. It was sad. It was sad. But it's beautiful to see them and how welcoming they are to these children, taking joy in the parenthood, and this man taking his fatherhood very seriously, and being very. In fact, he has now. I'm sure after having these children, he's sensed this fatherhood within him, and it's such a part of his personality now that I saw him, even though he wasn't much older than this young man who was a bit inebriated, but he was talking to him in a very paternal way with a lot of patience. And I thought, well, God bless him, God bless him. And I know that's what did it. It's because he's had the experience with these kids, again, who are wanted and loved. And so he's able to even show this to those around him who aren't his own by blood. And it was a beautiful witness, I have to say. I was really impressed. I was so edified by him. And his wife, too, who's just very accepting of just even something as silly as a tram being late or the bus not coming. They were wondering about the bus or whatever. And it's just easy to get frustrated here, because things aren't on time. And she's fine. She's smiling, but she's okay. And again, great example of being just accepting of divine providence, whichever way is manifested to you at that moment. Great.
Yep.
So I will be happy to come home and not have to deal with the buses and the trams and such. It'll be nice to get in a car and drive again.
Right.
Just go where you need to go. And on a really banal note, I've come to appreciate a place like Walmart that I think most people just can't stand going into. But there's something to be said for going into one place and just finding everything you need, getting in and getting out, and that's why instead of going to 4 different stores. and hoping you find the thing you need, but you can't really tell where you'll find that bit of tape, for example, that you need. Where am I going to find that? It's not, you can't, they don't have a CVS here, so you can't go to the pharmacy. They do only sell pharmaceutical things at the pharmacy. You can't go there. Where do you go? Post office? No, of course not. They're not going to at that post office. So where do you go? Supermarket? No, it's only food there. Oh, okay. Is there a card shop around? Maybe, but they'd have to find out where that is because we're not used to going to just plain card shops in the States as much as they are here.
Well, we're reaching the end of another program.
Went by.
So
when I come up, I was going to say what I'll have to talk about next week. I was hoping to have someone on and we could do a show about Mariology. We'll see if that comes through. If not, well then it'll just be a surprise next week.
Okay. Well, it was good. It was good to be with you, and thank you for sharing on your uncle.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and just for catching up. This is like a chat session this week, catching up with each other.
Right.
So that was good. We'll put up some pictures on the blog page from the march and from my uncle's funeral. So, but that's like I said.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah.
Well, we'll be back next week, same time, same station, with Just Plain Theology from Rome, Sweet Rome, with Natalia Eugen. And in the meantime, may God bless each and every one of you. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.